Okay, let's talk about our next project, which is populating balconies. So a lot of times you might be given a model, and when you're putting it in, you might want to be like, oh, I want to add a bit of realism by putting people or items or tables in onto balconies. And what I've done is I've gathered a few assets. We have one table, another table, and we have a few items to put on top of the tables, and then we have one person to add in. Now, important about these objects are the pivot and how I've grouped these. So if I go over here to my assets, you'll see when I select this is actually individual objects grouped together. So when we're doing the forest project, we're going to be adding in the group, not the actual object themselves. Same with this one here, we have a group here, but these are individual items. So how we populate this scene is, let's first of all create our forest project. Let's go icon mode and let's just drag it out. Okay, let's go into our modify panel and let's name this. I'm going to call this, let's go table groups. Okay, so now we're going to add in our first item, which will be here. So I'll add it in just in the actual layers panel. So if we go to assets, I'm going to add in my first one here. And how are we going to scatter these? Well, what I've done before this is I've gotten this scene and I've gone in and I've separated all the balconies. So if I isolate that, I have all these balconies separated. Another thing that you need to be aware of is the pivot location of these balconies. So if I go into local, you'll see I've put the direction of these balconies the direction they'll be facing from the building. You can change that if I go into here and I go to effect pivot only. I can then rotate the pivot the way I want. That's quite important when you're scattering these items, that the pivot is in the right location. Okay, so I'll unisolate that and we'll start populating these balconies. So go back to our forest project, go into modify, and we're going to go into our, distribution, and we're going to switch to reference mode. Okay, then I'm going to go in here and we're going to select all our balconies. Go all the way down and we have 215 balconies. Click OK. And now this has populated all our balconies. Okay, we have one here. And now if I go to display, I can change this to point cloud and it will make it a bit more clear. So let's change a few things. We're going to go into this transform and we're going to change this. Let's change the translation. We only wanted a subtle amount. We don't want it too much. And we're going to just click rotation. But obviously we don't want the tables rotating too much on the wrong axis. All we want are the Z axis. So we're going to put 0 in for all these except the rotation of the Z axis. So one thing we also want is most people don't have the table chairs like this where the chair is away. People have to want to look out into the balcony, not staring straight back into their own apartment. So let's limit this. Let's put it at about 100. And that means it won't rotate too far the other way. So now most of the balconies will not be rotating out that strange angle. Now we need to add in a few more. Or one more, I should say. So let's go into geometry and let's add in another. We can click back into our layers, make sure we click the group and the second one. And now we have two different ones. If I go into display and hit use color ID, we can then see the two different ones are showing up. Now, one thing is, well, there's one on every balcony. You probably don't want that. Not every person who has a balcony has a table and chairs. And you also, in other cases, I would make probably another up to 10. So we get a bit more variation. But for this example, I'm just showing you the concept and you can do that yourselves. So like I was saying, some people just won't have objects on their table, on their balcony. So we need to add in a null. So if I add in, we have this new item. It's asking me to click something. I'm going to go to disabled. And now this item is disabled. And as you can see, it's populating, but we just can't see it, but it's taking up a space. And now it's showing some of those blank empty balconies, which is what we want. However, you can see here we still have this full of the chairs and tables. We don't want that, so what we can do is we can grab these and we can decrease the probability, which is down here. So how often they'll show up. So if I keep decreasing this, you'll see some disappear. If I go all the way to 0, obviously they're gone altogether. But we can do something around 15%. And you'll see now it's a lot less, which is a bit more believable. So if I render this out, this is what it looks like so far. So we just have the one table and chair here, so let's increase the probability. So let's go into our Forest Pro object, grab these two items, and let's increase the probability a bit so we see a bit more. Okay, that'll do for now. Hit F9 again. Oh, well, let me do that in this one. Go again, and there we go. So now we have a table here, and a table here. So let's add in items on top of the table. So let's go back out and show you the items we have. So you might be asking, why didn't I just group these on top of the table as well? Well, it would make it look a bit odd if every single table had the exact same thing on top of the table. We also wouldn't be able to change the translation and be in the exact same place on the table as well. So we want these separate so we have a bit more control. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select my Forest Pro object and I'm going to duplicate it. Not an instance, make sure it's a copy, and go to items, we'll call it. Okay, actually just select this, and we're going to, in custom object, we're going to select here, and we're going to change the objects. Let's go for the cup, and let's go for this one. We're going to select, let's go for the kiwis. Click yes. And now you'll see we have the objects, but they're not in the right spot. They're at the bottom because of their pivot. There's two ways you can go about this, or maybe even more. The first one is you could change the pivot. So you could move this up and you could change the pivot based on the table. But these two tables have different heights. So you want to have a bit more control. So what I'm going to do is, if I go back to my Forest Pro object, F items, we can then go back here and I'm going to change this to mesh. Okay, so we can see the cup down here. So let's measure that. So we know the cup is with this table. Because of the way it's scattered, it will go on that table only, and the kiwis will go on the green table. So let's select our object and let's measure how tall this table is. The table's on 0. So you can see down here, it's on 0. And I'm going to click 1. Sorry, I'm going to go to group and open. Then I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit 1 to see how tall this table is. I'm going to grab this vert here and you can see it's at 1.047. So we'll copy that. Go back to our Forest Pro items. Go to our geometry, select the cup, and in the Z offset, just input in that amount. So now we have those cups on top of the table. And then I'll do the exact same. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select this table, open the group, measure from this point. There we go. We have that measurement. Go back to our Forest Pro items, select the kiwis this time, and Z offset that amount. So now, if I render that, we have the kiwis exactly on top of the table. Actually, it looks like it's a bit off those kiwis, and let's figure that out. I'm going to guess it's the pivot of the kiwis. I imported this object. Let's go back to the kiwis, select it, and we have the correct pivot, don't we? So the pivot's in the right spot. It must be the measurement we have. We must have selected a different one. So let's go to front view again. Yeah, so that we didn't have the correct one. So click 1 again. So it's 1 meter. Okay. So let's go back to our object. Select the cup. Go to our kiwis and change this to 1. Okay. Go back here, render it again, zoom in, and there you go. Now it's on top. Okay, let's zoom out. Let's make sure the cup is the same. And there you go, the cup is on top. It might look like it's floating, but that's just because this is a glass table. So let's zoom out. Now the last thing is I'm going to add a person. You'd have way more than what I have, which is just one person. But what we're going to do is we're going to grab our first item we created, table groups, duplicate it, and we'll call this person. Click OK. And we're going to remove all our items. Actually, we'll keep the bottom one. And we're going to add in this person. Click yes. Display type, point clouds. And we have an issue where there's a lot of them, which for the moment we don't mind because it's only shown once in this clip, but you might want to change it. He's actually showing up nicely in areas where there are no tables, but let's say we did have him in a table. So let's go to geometry, and let's say we didn't have this new item. Let's remove it. Then he's going to be everywhere. So I'm going to add in another object, bring the probability down. Sorry, excuse me. I select the person and then bring his probability down. It's not the right one. That's the scale. I want to change the probability. Bring him down, down, down. And let's say here we have this guy, but he's in smack in the middle of the table. Again, you could change the pivot if you want, but in my case, what you can do is you can go to items. Now, once you do this, it's going to disable area distribution because you're making your own changes, which is fine for me. So I'm going to click yes, select this guy, and we're going to move him. Okay, you can also go in, select them here, and delete. So then I'm going to go back to this object, render it out, and now we have that. We have a table, we have a person, we have tables here, and that's how you can populate balconies. Now, I'd recommend you add a bunch of more groups, like maybe 10 tables and chairs, a bunch more items, and definitely way more people. And that's a quick and easy way how you can populate balconies using Forest Pro.